We're delighted to have all you here again. Our Tuesday talk. This is my official welcome to you. And first of all, let me say we always like to give our thanks for Joe and Barbarish permitting us to have these premises while we're here. Yeah. Which is very kind. As you know, we are part of the White River Valley Historical Society, and our executive director, Trish Trimble, is in somewhere in the audience. There she is. And being a part of the society, we depend entirely on donations and memberships. So we appreciate those of you who are members, and we urge those who are not to become members. And then you can help support these problems. Problems. I am the problem. Meanwhile, our programs and also the quarterly publication, which members receive, which is very, very useful and handy. We have 3 more programs scheduled to come up. We will be having them also the rest of the year. On March 21, we'll have Bud and Linda Lynn on Backstage at Shepherd of the Hills Drama. And I think these leaflets will be available to you to take with you. And then on April 18, Ross Summers and Mark Spite. Ross is here somewhere. There he is. Speaking about Don Gardner and the origin of golf in the Ozarks. Many people think it all started with Point Royale or the other courses out front, but Don Gardner started golf here back in the 30s. Wow. And then on June 20, Annette Sane will be here, Ralph Foster remembered. And then to today's program. We're fortunate to have at least a 4 or 5 part show here. And, so we're bringing to you members of the Tillis family, Cindy, Connie, Marshall, and a stutterhead whom I don't know.
Tammy.
So I will let them, they know more about themselves than I do. Furthermore, I never like to take time from the performers for an long introduction. As you know, they always say, if the President of the United States is speaking, all you say is Mr. President. So all I'm going to say, Tillis family.
Thanks, Mr. Babcock. Appreciate you for having us today, and for all y'all for showing up. It's been incredible. All right, I'll stand up. All right, Miss Marie, she's my handler. Yeah, you know, we did a concert in August on what would have been Granddaddy's 90th birthday, you know, and so there's been a lot of days of remembrance that we've had, and we're just so thrilled to be here. And so we're going to kind of just do this organic and chat a little bit about our experiences coming to Branson. Granddaddy has a long career, and there are many places that are sort of the hubs of that career. Florida is certainly one of those, Nashville, and he had a great bit of his career in Branson. And so that's kind of what we're going to be here talking about today, kind of the Branson experience, and share from people who lived it literally in the show. So yeah, Cindy, you want to kind of...
Sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, I went to bed last night thinking about more. I knew Marshall and Connie and Tammy would cover the show aspect, but I wanted to kind of talk about Dad as the Branson and Ozark neighbor. And so I wrote a couple of things down. Janet told me not to read this from my phone, but thank you, Janet Ellis, the professional, but I'm going to read it from my phone. I didn't do the radio for however many years. So, Daddy the Ozark neighbor. We all know he fished the lakes with many people, including his best buddy, Shoji Tabuchi. And his famous joke was, of course, it never lasted long because Shoji would eat all the bait. We all know him from his infamous 60 Minutes interview where he really flung the doors wide open for many artists to come. I can remember standing at the Ozark Theater down by what's now Olive Garden, looking out and seeing Ray Stevens Theater going up. I said, Daddy, you've really done it now. I can also recall the very first week of the Ozark Theater shows. Daddy commissioned me and Michelle Bethel, her dad played the steel guitar for Daddy, and we'd known each other since kids, and he goes, Cindy, you need to go out and do some marketing. Okay, so they gave us tickets to go down the strip and hand them out to every hotel front desk operator I could find. And so we spent the next probably 3-4 hours laughing and going down the strip, and we thought, boy, we're really in the Ozarks now. Also recall another marketing adventure. My brother and I went down to the marina and we decided we were going to go fly fishing, and Daddy said, well, go over there and see if you can run into Boxcar. So sure enough, we found him at the fly tying shop, and Boxcar, being a good neighbor, said, well, come on to my house. Oh, I almost stuttered on Boxcar. Boxcar with his overalls said, well, come on over to the house. The missus would like to meet you. So we head over to Box's house up on top of the hill by the lake, and I told my brother, I nudged him, I said, we are really in the Ozarks now. So let me get back to my list. So Daddy, again, as the Ozark neighbor, he once got slimed at Silver Dollar City during Nickelodeon days. Connie, you got slimed with him. He was the grand marshal of at least one Christmas parade, I think one of his last events here. More than that, he loved entertaining, and he loved the fact that he could meet his fans, and he would spend hours after every show. He was probably most proud of the next couple of things. He hired 2 homegrown singers with a legacy of their own, Tammy and Tanya, the Stutterettes. And they have a whole nother story. He also made a way for many young people to start a career by training them at the theater. Did you know that the Rolling Stones have used one of our light designer, or that the great Steve Miller has hired Jamie Carter as his sound engineer? So Dad was proud to bring along the younger Jamie. Yes, you were younger back then. Also, again, let me get back to, he couldn't wait every day to get to the office to answer his fan mail, and he couldn't wait to get the attendance for the show that day. So if it was above a certain number, he'd say, boy, oh boy, we're going to have a show tonight. And lastly, the Branson years gave us precious time back with our dad that we missed when we were little. And I knew I was going to go.
I knew it.
I remember when we first came to Branson, my job was to sit in a tiny office and count the box office receipts. And my dad's accountant was using a lead pencil with a piece of paper. I said, this isn't going to work. So I brought some technology along with my arrival. But my job was to pull together a report and take it back to Dad at the end of the night and show him everything we had done in attendance and the gift shop. And it was hard because I felt like I didn't know him as well. But over the course of 12 years, I learned that he loved the ocean, he had an affinity for the sea, he loved the lake, which is why I took up sailing on Table Rock Lake. He loved lighthouses. He was always working on his relationship with the Lord. And those things are precious. And so by the end of my 12-year working alongside him, I knew so much more about my dad. And for me, Branson gave us that. So thank you so much. Great honor to be here. I told Mr. Babcock, count us in for anything. Love y'all.
Now this is my godmother, Tammy. Cindy is too. These are my 3 moms, by the way. Yeah.
That's because I could tell a story on you, but I won't.
We've said no
stop
Marshall
there.
stories yet.
I tell you what a lot of people don't know about Mel is I met him in, it was either 1969 or 1970, right here in Branson. And that's because I was part of the Ball Knobbers. I am niece to the 4 May brothers that started the Ball Knobbers. And so I sang on there as a little bitty girl. And Mel used to love to tell this story on stage because when I was 6 years old, he came, and the Ball Knobbers used to have a star come into Branson, and they would open for us. Like, we had Mel Tillis twice, we had lots of different people. And I loved Mel. And I think that's because Mel loved children. And even while we were at the theater, Marshall sang every time he was in the theater, and all of his grandkids, and then he would even throw our kids out there. But he loved kids, and he carried me out to the bus that night because he heard me sing, and he said, "Hey, little one, I'm going to see you in Nashville someday." Well, when Tanya and I were hired, my sister is also a stutterette, and she couldn't be here today. But when we were hired, we stood in his new theater right there on 65 Highway. And we stood in the auditorium, and he asked if we wanted to see our dressing room. Well, honestly, we didn't even know if we were hired yet. But that was his way of hiring people. No one ever knew they were hired. We just, started. So anyway, we're standing in the theater, and I said, "Mel, I want to tell you a story. You used to come to Ball Knobbers." "Yeah." He said, "I remember a night when we were there and it was storming and we had to shut down for a little while because way back when, if any of you were here back in the 60s and early 70s, when all the theaters started building, which at the time was just Ball Knobbers, Presley's, Plumbers, and Foggy's, we would shut off the electricity." Hey, by the way, this is White River, right? We shut off the electricity in the whole town of Branson because we were overloading it. And that happened quite frequently. And so it happened the night that Mel was at our theater, and he carried me out to his bus, and that's when he said, so we're standing there in the auditorium, and I said, "I have to tell you a story, because if you remember carrying the little girl out to the bus," I said, "that was me." And he said, "I remember you." He remembered that I sang, "I'm little but I'm loud." And I said, "Well, you told me that you would see me in Nashville someday." And I said, "And guess what? I didn't have to go to Nashville because you came to me." And so he loved to tell that story. But listen, the reason Cindy made the comment about how she didn't know her dad as well as she wanted to, and being here in Branson gave the kids the opportunity to be so close to him, and it was wonderful. And listen, I gained sisters. I gained a whole lot of sisters and a brother, and I gained kids that became ours too. We even wiped Marshall's butt. I had to say it. Sorry, Marshall. But anyway, I gained a family that I had never known before, and that's how Mel was. He was a family man. And guess what? Even when he was gone all that time, he talked about y'all. And in his days of being the big guy, when he had the number ones, he would tell us that he was gone 350 days out of the year. Because back in the days when Tammy Wynette, Mel Tillis, George Jones, they were all touring, they toured. They didn't get to come home. And so it was hard on his family to be home without him. And so I got to tell you guys something, and we got to witness this. He loved Branson. I think Branson, one of the things he loved the most is he got to be with his family. And he was so proud of each and every one of you. We heard it all the time. Everything that y'all did, we got to hear about it, good or bad. But anyway, he was a wonderful man who treated us like family. Yeah, he did treat us like daughters. And the last story I'll tell you is the first road show that we went on with Mel. This is how we knew that he really cared about us as women, and I was 28 years old. My sister and I got to the hotel, and the band was 2 buildings over. Now, our band was great. They treated us like sisters. So when I tell you this, it doesn't mean that he had to protect us. The Statesiders are incredible. But our room was next door to Mel Tillis, and the band was 2 buildings down. He wanted to protect us, and he did every single day that we were with him, and I appreciate that so much. That same road show, we got to be with lots of different artists because we were doing a birthday party for Howard Harlan or Harlan Howard, I'd never remember.
Yeah.
We were doing his birthday party and Billy Dean was there and Tanya and I were young and, you know, hadn't got to meet a lot of the great artists, and Billy Dean was there. And we said, Mel, that is Billy Dean up there singing. He stood there and he looked at us and he went, well, you sure don't act that way about me, and I'm a legend. That was Mel. Thank y'all for being here.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Tammy. You know, everybody in my family knows this about me. I cry really easily. And Mel's daddy wrote a song. He said, "Don't play it for Connie, though. She'll cry." So, but you know, we had an amazing 13 years. Dad, I had just got married and then was expecting Marshall, and he said, "Well, why don't you come to Branson and work and sell the T-shirts and hats and things, and you and your husband can handle the inside concession." I said, "Okay, that sounds great." He said, "I'll give you 10%. I said, "Okay, that sounds fair." Well, Daddy didn't know that 10%, the 6th week we were open on 65, the theater had done $1 million in 6 weeks. So yeah, we got our first paycheck and we were happy as we could. I might need to rethink that. So we did that for 2 years. Marshall was born. He played in a little playpen back behind the concession stand, and then Tanya, Tammy's sister, was expecting, and they needed another stutterette. And I have stage fright, folks. It scares me. I did it, but it was hard. And there was not one day that I didn't get out there just, "Oh, hi, I'm Connie," and sing my song. But I could get through it, but it was tough. But anyway, he said, "Well, this year I need a backup stutterette." He said, "You can do it." And I was like, "What?" And I had to wear Tanya's clothes. And I was safety pinning here and there and doing it. Was just, but it was a lot of fun. And then I graduated to sing solo, and that was fun too. And then, of course, shortly after that, 14 months old, Marshall could not wait to get on that stage. He just loved everything about it. That was precious. One day he even upstaged Wayne Newton. Marshall just really got a bigger applause, and I think it kind of made Wayne a little bit mad. One Daddy said, "All right, well, we're gonna have an X on the stage." He put a masking tape in the shape of an X, and he'd say, "All right, Marshall, get on your mark." And Marshall he'd walk out there and get on that little mark and do his song, and it's so cute. Well, one day he said, "I'm gonna mess with Marshall today." I said, "Oh Lord, what are you gonna do?" He said, "I'm gonna take the X up." So he took the X up and he said, "All right, Marshall, get on your mark." And Marshall was like, it was so funny. But I tell you, we had the best time, and we did. We get to spend really, really precious times with our dad. And he'd cook in between, during the intermission, he'd go back and stir gumbo or watch the football game. And he lived back there. We all lived at the theater. The kids, during the Christmas show, we did a 2 o'clock matinee, and then we did a 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock, that's right. So you basically lived at the theater. Well, the first half of the show, we would do the regular show, and then for the Christmas half, I had to get in the car, go down the road to the elementary school, pick up the kids. They would change clothes in the car all the way back to the theater. And then they'd run out there and do the second half, and that just went on for a lot of years, and it was too much fun. You know,
Connie, you need to tell them about the time you came out in the wrong outfit.
oh, well, apparently there was an outfit change, and I still had on my gown and my house coat.
Everybody's in the dress.
Everybody's out in these beautiful long white gowns, sparkly gowns, and I come out there in house shoes and house coat. It was bad.
Sorry.
But, no, there's just so many fun stories, and, you know, losing a parent, you just don't get over it. And that's, you know, we cry a lot, and, but we love y'all for being here, and thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm gonna turn this over to Marshall before it gets really bad.
Thanks, Mom. You know, we started saying that a few years ago. Cindy and I got on stage and accepted the Lifetime Achievement Award at the Branson Grammys, and we started to say how thankful we were to Branson, you know, because if it hadn't have been for Branson, we wouldn't have had all those years. And as I was writing some things down to speak today, I thought, you know, my granddaddy made a career decision to be close to me, and made a career decision to be close to his daughters. And that is so valuable. And he got this place from the very beginning, you know. The biggest names that came here kind of came and went, you know, when Willie Nelson built a theater and Johnny Cash, because they didn't really live here, you know. And the people that were in the audience, they wanted to see that. They wanted to see that you went out and you know, shopped in the grocery stores, and that you slept in the same bed every night, and you committed to Branson, you know. And so that was what we're so grateful for this community. And I think that's an incredible legacy that he leads. You know, we're trying to, what this museum is doing, and some of the things that the mayor and I have done, of trying to remember these legends that got us to where we're at. But, you know, Mom said it, we lived at that place. You know, I mean, it was 2 shows a day, 6 days a week, every day but Monday, and every month but January. And she mentions that I, you know, got dressed in the car because I wasn't homeschooled. There's a contingent of kind of a fraternity, or whatever you might call it, of younger people who were in shows, right? I think of Doug Gabriel's kids, who I grew up with, and a lot of them went homeschool, but we didn't. We were Branson High School all the way through, right? And so that was one thing that was so unique, and growing up in that theater with Tammy every day, and the familial bond. She's so family. And you know, Cindy came over the other night and we had dinner, and she was talking about when she became the manager of the theater, and how just a great job that she did managing a little city. That's what I kept coming back to when I was, you know, because we had a chocolate shop in there. We had a painting store. I mean, it was literally an ecosystem. To even turn that theater on is X thousands of dollars. You know, I mean, it's incredible what Branson was, what the boom was at that time. It'll never be recreated exactly the way it was, because the energy and the spirit that was in this place. And my grandpa had a lot to do with that, and I'm so proud of that legacy. And I would stand on the side of that stage, you know, and we talk about this so much. Me and Mom even wrote a song, and we sang it for the Beach Boys when they were here, you know, about standing on the stage and watching Granddaddy. And then he'd do the same thing, and he'd come off and he'd watch me, you know. And I'll always be grateful for that, and for that opportunity. Family is everything. And I mean, gosh, people don't get a chance to be with their grandpa every single day, period, whether he's a superstar or not, you know. And so that's what we got. It's something that I will always be grateful for. I continue to this day to relive that legacy, and to try to do my little part in continuing that. So I just appreciate you guys coming today, and I think we want to open it up to questions now. And so, appreciate it.
And Marshall and all the grandkids, they had their own dressing room, and it was called the Varmints. The name on the doors is the Varmints.
Yeah, Scudderettes and the Varmints. Right?
Yeah, that's fun. It was a lot of fun.
Any questions? Sure.
I got a question.
Tom.
That's for Connie.
Hey, Tom.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I seem to recall you telling a story about your dad being in England, and he was going to bring home some Christmas gifts for the kids.
Oh,
and you.
yes.
Maybe you'd like to share that.
Well, 1966, I think it was. Yeah, it's about 1966. The Beatles were really big. And we wanted a Beatles, that we knew Daddy was over in England, so we said, bring us home some lunch boxes. We all wanted the little Beatles lunchbox. So he did, he found them. And got back home and we were all excited and we were opening and looking at the little thingy, the little, you know, the thermos deal. And we flipped it over and on the bottom of the lunchbox it said, "Made in Nashville, Tennessee." At the Aladdin Lamp Company, which was literally 2 blocks from our house. He got so mad, he said, I can't believe that. He said, "I lugged those things all over Europe." So that did happen.
Another question?
Yeah. Cindy, I think Cindy had something to yeah.
Oh, no, I was gonna share, I've had the opportunity to, Jamie knows this about that, he kept a legal pad or a notebook everywhere he ever was. Writing songs or just writing out lyrics or whatever he could write out. We have them, and there's just stacks and stacks of legal tablets. He did a lot of word searches. He was very much into the English language and would write out definitions of words over and over again. And I'm sure that was born out of his disability as a child and his speech impediment. Found a lot of wonderful letters that he wrote to parents of kids who stuttered. And these letters are the most priceless, precious things. But one day I was looking at a legal tablet and was about to put it in the stack with everything else. And I happened to turn it upside down. And Daddy had drawn a heart with a pencil. And he'd written in it, "The Mel Tillis Show." And he crossed it out and wrote "The Mel Tillis Family Show" and wrote all of our names out in his heart. And it's a prized possession. So.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you have those notebooks.
Yeah.
Another question? Yes.
Where's Carrie April?
Oh.
Yeah, Carrie, exciting news to report. She has a wonderful new boyfriend. She's so blessed. She was in a play, she was in the story of The Hiding Place in Nashville, and she actually played a Betsy Ten Boom. And of course, Branson has a connection to Corrie Ten Boom because she made the famous prophecy that Branson would be a site for a great revival. But Carrie got to play Betsy, and in the book, if you've read The Hiding Place, and I recommend it, Betsy is actually the younger sister and not the older one. Corrie was actually the older one, but she played, in the theater, she played the older sister. And so Carrie did so well, but she's little, she's petite. She got thrown right before she dies in the play. She gets thrown around a lot. And so Carrie was like, "That's the last play I'm ever doing." But then about the same time, her artwork started getting noticed. And of course, my mom is an artist. My dad was Carrie's biggest fan and her paintings. And she is working on a 50-state National Arts Commission project for every state that she has to turn in by March. So she has to crank out like 3 paintings a day. So bless her heart, she's working really hard, but I'll tell her that she still sings, but right now she's focusing on the new boyfriend and the artwork.
I have a question about your father's art. Is it landscapes or people?
He did a series of, he did a whole series about the Masons. He became he was in the Masonic order here, became a Grand Cross. He did a lot of scenes from the Everglades because he grew up there. Just a whole range. He did when he did the Big River show for Roger Miller tribute. He did quite a few of the Huck Finn, Mark Twain scenes.
He also did he enjoyed presidents. So I have one that I'd like to bring to you for this cause.
Yeah, and we have prints that we want to donate, and then the proceeds will go towards this effort. So be looking for those as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Other question?
I've got one more question, if it's all right.
Go ahead.
Yes.
I believe that there was a fire in Nashville at a warehouse that had been storing the originals, recordings of a lot of artists. Connie, can you speak to that? Or one of you?
Actually,
And
that
how-
was, it wasn't Nashville, it was LA,
Okay,
and it was the Universal Music
that's right,
Storage.
that's right.
But what they have told us is that what was of Dad's that was destroyed were some commercials and jingles and some things he had worked on. So from what we've been told, his works were not touched. So, yeah. We don't know if that's true, but that's what they've told many artists. I mean, Tom Petty had a actual, concern about that, and many other artists, but so far, that's what we've been told. Yep.
Well, we wait for another question. Marshall, I think you have a person who we need to know.
Yeah, my wife is here. Miss Kendra.
Yeah.
Kendra Howden.
Thank you.
That's right. She's a pharmacist. We're so proud of her.
Yes.
And I appreciate you coming, baby. Yeah. And
Can I
then,
tell another story?
yeah, go ahead, Tammy.
Okay, I thought about this one. When you mentioned that he does a lot of things for foundations, for hearing impaired and speech impaired, he did a lot of that. And my husband was Mel's sound engineer for a very, very long time. And he got the privilege of going with Mel to do those. But I got to tell you a lot of mine are going to be stage stories, but standing on stage with Mel is the most incredible thing in the world because he loved his audience. Oh my, he loved to perform. And we did 3-hour shows down here in Branson, which was unheard of, you know. We were in stiletto heels and it hurt. But anyway, one day he always gave away merch, during his show. And for some unbeknownst reason, except that I do tell you he loved children, he picked a kid that was on the 13th row. And I can't even remember what this child looked like. He picked a boy back on row 13. And for anybody who's been on the stage, it's not easy to see row 13. But he said, I'd like you to come get my book, or whatever it was, I can't remember. And so the boy acted like he really didn't want to get up, so his sister come up with him, and they came up to the edge of the stage, and Mel gets down on his knees to talk to him. What's your name? Oh, come on, son, what's your name? It's not so scary. The boy starts crying. And so his sister talked in his place and said, my brother stutters. This really happened. My brother stutters. And anybody who knew Mel knows that if he got flustered or if he was extremely tired or didn't feel well, he stuttered worse. And yes, our largest question was always, does Mel really stutter? Yes, Mel really stutters. And it took his breath away. And he was down on his knees and had no idea what to say. And when Mel couldn't think of what to say, he would turn to his band and us like, what do I say, And so finally, he said, it's okay. And the girl told him his name, and they went back and sat down, and he hugged the boy. And we went almost directly to intermission, which never happened at our theater. And he came straight to me and said, hurry up and go get that boy. I need that boy. So I ran out in the audience. I got the boy and his whole family. We had a 30-minute intermission. And as far as I know, he still wrote that boy, because I know many years later he was still writing letters to that young man. But that day was just pretty incredible thing that happened, because I think that was a God thing.
I want to say one other thing. Tammy mentioned that Jamie's here, and one time I went up and I stayed with y'all, and I rode back in the car with Jamie, and those things that you hear a million times but they don't resonate. And Jamie said, your grandpa always would say the same thing when he'd come out of his dressing room. He'd clap his hand and say, let's go to work, And he'd have that mentality, the show must go on mentality. And that's how you have to build anything that you work for in this world. And that's what I learned from my grandpa is, you have passion and you do the things that you're passionate about, but you put in the work and that's how you get there, you know. And he was just such a great role model in so many ways, and so many things that I'll take away from that. So,
Thank you. Is that one else? Yes.
What was his relationship with Minnie Pearl?
Well,
I know a little, but.
well, Minnie was, the way I heard it, and Daddy was in the studio one day. When he first came to Nashville, he wanted to be a singer. And he walked in the publishing company, and he was only like 26 years old. And he could really stutter really bad back then, and he walked in to the publishing company. He said, "I want to be a singer." And they all laughed. They laughed at him. They said, "Well, we don't need any stuttering singers." He said, "Well, what do you need?" And they said, "Well, can you write a song?" He said, "Well, I think so, I'll try." So we went back down to Florida, lived in the middle of the orange groves in a little bitty sharecropper house with palmetto bugs that big and alligators and snakes and mosquitoes would eat you alive. And Daddy wrote 5 songs. We got back in that old Chevy and went back to Nashville about a year later. Turned them in, and they were all huge hits. Every one of them. And so they signed Daddy as a songwriter, and he was in the studio one day picking out a song. Him and just a handful of songwriters in Nashville at that time, they'd write 2 or 3 songs a day sometimes, and sell them to each other for, you know, grocery money or whatever. It's boots, yeah, things like that. But anyway, Minnie came in, and she, Daddy was, you know, singing in one of his songs he had just wrote. She did a double take, and she said, "Melvin, I didn't know you could sing." He said, "Well, they wouldn't let me." And he said, "All right." She said, "Well, I need a lead guitar and a backup vocalist, and I need a fiddle player." He said, "Well, I got the background vocal and the guitar covered, and I know just the guy to do the fiddle part." And so he ran down the road, and there was a young man that worked at the Hermitage Hotel as a bellhop, and his name was Roger Miller. Yes. He said, "Roger," he said, "Minnie wants us to go on the road with her." He said, "You need to give your notice." He said, "All right, I'll give him a notice." And he took off his bellhop hat and threw it. He said, "Let's go." So him and Roger Miller joined Minnie Pearl's band, and every now and then she'd push Daddy up front and let him do a song. Well, he'd sing a song, and then Roger would come over and say, "Mel says thank you." Well, Minnie got wind of that and saw him do it, said, "Oh, no. He said, "All right." He said, "You can't do that anymore, Roger." He said, "Let him talk for himself." And Mel said, "Well," Daddy said, "I don't know." He said, "They'll laugh at me." And she said, "Well, give them something to laugh about." And that started Daddy's career. And so many of y'all know he was, not only was he a great songwriter and you know, just a great entertainer, he was funny, just funny. And so we can thank Minnie Pearl for Daddy's career.
That reminds me too of the funny, because he talked about it funny. And so he went up to Roger Miller one time and he said, "Now Roger, we've been friends for a long time." He said, "I think we need to write a song together." And Roger Miller looked at him real seriously and he said, "Did Picasso have a co-painter?"
You should co-write with me. He said, "Did Picasso have a co-painter?"
That's funny.
I don't know what time it is. Daddy and I had to drive back to Nashville, and I got, you know, he needed to ride back, and so we took his red Silverado truck and headed to Nashville, and, you know, we had a long way to talk, and I said, "Daddy, what was your proudest moment of your career?" And he thought, and he goes, "I'll tell you what it was. And this is my proudest moment." He said he was hired for a Republican fundraiser, sorry, Democrats, Republican fundraiser out in California, and they hired him at, he had 45 minutes, they were going to pay him $45,000 for 45 minutes, on the condition that he got off the stage promptly after 45 minutes. Well, Jamie and the rest of y'all, But he held to his word, got up, kicked off the show. They paid, guaranteed money. Thought, well, I'm getting off the stage at 45 minutes. So he steps off the stage, and this tiny little woman, well-dressed, very groomed, came up. She was he said she was about 5 feet tall. She said, "Young man, would you please go back up on that stage and play Tennessee Waltz for me?" And he said, "Well, lady," the guy told me 40, and about that time, the promoter tapped on the shoulder, and he thought, oh no. He goes, "You can do whatever she tells you to do." He goes, "Okay, lady, I'll make it." So he jumps back on, and I'll kick it off. He kicks off Tennessee Waltz. He gets halfway through it. He tells the band to continue on. He steps off the stage. He goes up to the little woman. He said, "Would you please dance with me?" And they danced and danced to the rest of the Tennessee Waltz. And afterwards, she looked up at him and said, "Son, I haven't danced like that since my general passed." And she was General MacArthur's widow. And there are pictures of him with her, and that was his most famous moment. And I looked that up, and she was a Murfreesboro, Tennessee girl. And they called her the most patriotic girl in the neighborhood. So that was his favorite memory.
Oh, I was just thinking about the time when Daddy did Vegas before Branson. He did a lot of Vegas, and we were sitting in the dressing room, and Nancy Sinatra came in, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was starstruck. Well, she invited us over to see her father's show that night. So we all got to go, Caesar's Palace, front row, velvet table, and old Blue Eyes. He did a song or two, and then he stopped. He said, "All right, folks," he said, "I normally don't do this." He says, "I don't usually introduce anyone in my show." He was real he had a big ego. But he said, "I want y'all to meet a friend of mine in the audience, Mr. Mel Tillis." And I mean, Daddy had a smile from ear to ear. And and everybody clapped, and Daddy waved, and so of course Frank started his set back up and started singing again, and Daddy nudged me and he goes, "How's that for VIP?" That's pretty good, Dad.
So many of the, go ahead.
No, you
so
go.
many of the fun, great stories are friends of Granddaddy.
Yeah.
He was great friends with Porter, Wagner, and so many of these connections. We would sit back in his dressing room and watch football, and he was a Florida Gators fan, which us Tennessee Vols fans, we had to just get over that, But Dick Butkus and, so many amazing people would come back in that dressing room. And that was, we get to live vicariously through who Granddaddy connected with. Terry Bradshaw was one of his good buddies because they were in that movie together. And yeah.
Well, the story I was going to tell has to do with his friends, because Tanya and I, we were Branson town girls. We actually lived in Highlandville. But like I said, Ball Knobbers was our family, so he used to think it was so funny to watch Tanya and I when we met his friends, So one of the first things he told us is, well, first person that we loved to meet was Pam, because she was such a phenomenal female vocalist. And so Pam was coming that day, and he said, "Now don't y'all act like germs." So there you go, you've learned a new word today. A germ is basically somebody that acts really germy around stars. So it's a hard G, it's germ. And so we're like, okay. So we always had to act like all these people were normal, and they are, they're just like us. But one night we were doing the show, and Mel asked the audience, he said, "Would y'all like to meet my friend? I have a friend backstage. Would y'all like to meet him?" Well, one thing that, Marshall, you didn't make clear is his second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh year down here, at least 8 years, we were sold out every night, 2,800 seats. and we were sold out matinee and night show, and we sold seats in the cry room. We had a cry room, and people would pay to sit in the cry room because they wanted a seat to see this man entertain. But anyway, that particular night, he had asked the audience, "Do you want to meet my friend?" And so Tanya and I are like, "Wonder who's here." Out walks Johnny Cash. And Mel always get this little smirk on his face because he knew Tony and I were back there going. But of course we couldn't. We're just all boys. And out walks Johnny Cash, and Mel looks over at us and goes, doop, 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 doop. Which means he wanted us to sing backup with him. And we got to, which was fabulous. But there were so many people that would just show up because they loved Mel. And another time, Tanya and I were in the dressing room, and it was a Wednesday night. And I said, I really wish there'd be somebody good out there tonight, you know, because there's somebody out there that's really cool that just kind of makes the show way more exciting. Tony's like, "It's Wednesday. Nobody's going to be here tonight." I said, "Well, you never know." Well, we get out on stage, the curtain opens, and within seconds, I said, "Conway Twitty, front row center." Tanya's like, "All right." I said, "I swear he's down there in the Adidas socks and shorts." And he came backstage, and we never even took pictures with them because we were so scared we were going to be a germ. But anyway, that's it.
That actually happened to me in Vegas, another Vegas story. I came in and sitting on the couch was Burt Reynolds, and it was in the height of Burt Reynolds' good-lookingness, if that's a word. That man was so good-looking, and he was tan, and he had his arm on the couch, and his arm was right near next to me, and I'm just like looking at his hand. I'm just thinking, "Oh God, look at his skin, it's so pretty, and it's so round, oh my God, and his teeth are so white, and oh God." And you know, and so I'm saying all this stuff internally. So I thought I'm getting really, I'm starting to look kind of germy here. So I got up and left the room, acting like, "Oh, no big deal. This is cool. I can handle it." Left the room, and you know, in Vegas they have these. I don't know if they still do it, but they had these dance women that would come around and take pictures. That's what they did. They would take. She went in the room and took pictures of the rest of my family with Burt Reynolds, and they're all like this. And I'm out in the hall not knowing this was going on. So I missed my chance to get a picture with Burt Reynolds. And I said, darn. That was so.
We did get our with Billy Bob Thornton.
Billy Bob Thornton.
Oh, yeah.
And he left here with a rhinestone jacket of dad's, and it was so funny. It looked funny on
Well,
him.
when the Beach Boys came and they did their week at the theater,
Oh, that was
you know, and
8 shows. So
yeah, incredible. And they had their own, you know, they didn't really dress up exactly. And that was Granddaddy's thing, you know, he would dress up to the nines.
Yeah.
But the last show, they all came out in Mel Tillis jackets, and we all thought that was pretty
yeah.
funny. Yeah. You got a question?
One of the funniest show things that I ever saw Mel do, he had an implant up here in the front. And Mel never missed a show. He could be sick as a dog and he's still going to do the show. Well, this particular time he got his teeth done, and he was still very sleepy from the medication that they'd given him. He didn't care. He always kicked up his leg and did all kinds of tricks during the show. Well, his tooth fell out. No, this is hilarious. It bounced. He caught it in the air, stuck it back in, and kept on singing.
We had a question back here.
That was the question when you were talking about his outfits. Did he have a place that did his particular type of jackets and so forth?
Yeah.
Nudie.
There's two
Manuel.
Nudie Suits is a big one in Manuel in Nashville. Right there on Music Row was and
We actually have a letter that Daddy wrote to Manuel complaining about the price of the and that they weren't right. He was sending them back, and
oh yeah.
We had leady boots. and Letty is a famous boot maker. Well, he actually came to the theater and measured all of our feet, you know, to get boots. Those were the most uncomfortable boots I ever put on in my life. Well, they mold to your feet. You know, I guess they measured everything about them. Well, they weren't very comfortable. Hate to say it. Now, the band loves them.
Yeah.
Maybe they're more for a man.
Yeah. Granddaddy was so, he would do things sort of off the cuff. And it wasn't a set list for the show. He'd just turn around and he'd say, I'm going to do this song now, kind of thing. And so they had all the colors. Yep.
This was Burning Memories. And this was 8 days on the road, or 6 days on the road.
New patches.
New patches.
So the band leader would come in and say, what are we wearing tonight? And I'd say, brown, or, you know, those horrible brown suits, you know, yeah. So they had all the different colors, you know, yeah.
When he was mad at them, they wore their yellow suits.
Oh, yeah.
School bus yellow.
Well, I think we were one of the first theaters to do like a big New Year's Eve show, and one New Year's, and we had to time the dropping of the balloon, the thing net with all the balloons and the disco ball. You know, we had to time it to midnight. So I'm on the side of the stage, which I was always in the office, but I had coordinated the big balloon drop. So I'm on the side of the stage, and Daddy's about to kick off the last song, and we had like 10 minutes to go, and I'm like, Daddy, and I'm over there going, stretch, stretch, stretch. Well, Daddy saw me, and they kicked off another instrumental, and then came off the stage and said, Cindy, I know how to stretch. That was my last time in show business.
Anything more?
I think that's it. I think that's,
Well, we really have appreciated this. And let me also say we're honored to have His Honor the Mayor today.
Just to take a quick moment and acknowledge something that I'm sure we all agree with. In my opinion, Mel is upstairs, and he is providing love and guidance for his whole family. Personally, I think Mel is grinning ear to ear in how proud he is of his grandson, Marshall.
No more questions? Well, thank you again so very much.